Welcome to the only show bringing cops and the community together for some real talk and some real listening. This is uncut. This is uncensored. This is Black and Blue Live. Hey, welcome Black and Blue fam. How you doing out there? Welcome to the show. If you don't know me, my name is Dale. I'm the host of Black and Blue Live. I hope everybody's having a good weekend. It's been hot out here in California, so we're just trying to cool down. But we are back with another great show. We had some technical difficulties last time we tried to do this, but we are back. We don't quit. We don't stop. So we're here right now. So let me bring on my co-host. Elizabeth. Come on. How you doing?
Hey fam, we back. I'm so glad to be here. How you doing, Dale?
I am good. Thank you for coming back.
Of course. I wouldn't miss this. This is going to be an amazing show. We've got some amazing people who were so gracious to join us. And I'm excited to just have this conversation. And we want to encourage our audience, those watching, those listening in, please comment, ask questions. Everything we can do to build community, that's what we're about. So we just want to invite you all to engage and just help us to make this world a little bit better.
Absolutely. And I want to make sure everybody knows that we are live right now on these various platforms on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with all your peeps, so your family, your friends, your coworkers, and get this word out like Elizabeth just said right now. So that's what we're all about. And this show today is going to be about linking us and communicating with officers in the community. So that's what we're here to do. So let me bring on our first guest, and we'll let them tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we'll get into this conversation. So our first guest here, he is from Northern California. Everyone, please help us welcome in Mr. Scott Savage.
Yeah.
Welcome.
I like that. Hey, thanks for having me. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely.
So glad you're here.
Thank you. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Scott.
Yeah, my name's Scott Savage. Been a police officer in California for about 22 years. Born and raised in Northern California, right in the middle of the Bay Area. Love being a cop. Just have a few more years left, and then I'll hang it up and let everyone else have some fun. But I'm looking forward to today's conversation. I think this is great. So I'm hoping the audience asks us some tough questions. So I'm ready. I'm feeling ready.
You look ready.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Excited. Thank you. All right. Our next guest hails from the great state of Florida. Everyone, please help us welcome in Mr. John Schultz.
Hey, Dale. Hey, Elizabeth. Hey, Scott. Nice to meet you.
Hello. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes, I wouldn't miss it.
All right. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, John.
Yeah, Dale. I'm John Schultz. I'm a state trooper in Florida. Been a trooper for 29 years. Currently assigned to one of our homicide units. So I deal a lot with traffic homicides and those things that deal with making those cases. So.
Yeah. And I actually, being in the highway patrol, you've done lots of traffic enforcement in your day, so you contact lots of people in the state, so you're a good person to have on the show. Various people that you contact in enforcement. So, yeah, glad to have you. Thank you for joining us. And our last guest here hails from the great state of North Carolina. Everyone, please help us welcome in Scott Medlin. Oh, he was there. What happened to him? Is he there?
This is his Marvel superhero moment.
Yeah.
Scott's hiding.
He's there. You know what? Let's just bring him on here. Bring everybody on there. There he is, Scott.
Look, you got an extra applause, Scott. You got an ovation.
He's doing a little Houdini act right there. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, since we didn't give you the spotlight right there. Oh no, maybe I should put the blackout screen back.
Hey.
Put the blackout
Gosh.
screen
Well,
back.
that's
Yeah.
our show for today. Thank you everybody for
Yep.
coming out. No, I'm just kidding.
No. I'm glad each of you decided to join us on this. As you see here on the lower third, we're gonna have some real talk. And someone said we can't hear Scott. I don't know what Scott they're talking about. Maybe that's you, Scott Medlin. If you could turn up your feed there a little bit, I'll see if I could do a little something here on my end. And everyone out there, just make sure that if you have anything like that, any technical things, just be sure to let us know like that one just did. And then we'll be sure to try to rectify that on our end. But our conversation today is going to be about cops and communities of color. So right now we all know that law enforcement is taken some hard hits recently with good reason on a lot of fronts. And we're going to talk about how we can mend those fences. And a lot of the people that were being depicted wrongly or rightfully in these conflicts were white male police officers. So we wanted to bring some on, and we wanted to see how we could kind of mend these fences, talk to one another, and get some understanding, so that all of us on all sides, Elizabeth and I are police officers as well, but we're also African American. So we want to kind of be the liaison between both sides here, and we want to make it one side, right? Not left, not right, not cops against community. We want to, blend it together. So that's what this conversation is about. So please, everyone out there, make sure you sign on with your comments and questions, and we'll get those on, and the guests will be sure to answer those. All right? Thank you. So, gentlemen, real quick, what was your journey into law enforcement? We'll start off with that. Your journey into law enforcement. Have you always wanted to be, a police officer? Did you kind of fall into it? Did you have family into it? We'll start with you, Scott Savage. We'll start with you. What was your journey into law enforcement?
Yeah, my journey to becoming a cop, I guess, was a little unorthodox. No, I didn't grow up wanting to be a police officer. It didn't occur to me. I was a paramedic. I was an EMT at 19. I was a paramedic at 23, and I just loved that job. And you guys wouldn't know anything about this, but when people call paramedics, they're happy to see them. It's not like when they call us, right? No one's happy to see the cops. When I was a paramedic, yeah, it was great. I loved it. It just, things started changing. The fire department started providing paramedic service, so we were kind of like having to take a little bit of a back seat, and that really didn't suit me, especially being a young guy that wanted to go out and conquer the world. And so I looked for a job that was similar, something that was outside, kind of out. I didn't really want to work in an office, something that I thought was noble, something that I thought was physically challenging and mentally challenging, and something I could be proud of, and kind of wanted everything in a career. And police work looked like it would, be for me. And so I had a grandfather that was a police officer, an Amarillo police officer, and unfortunately he was killed in the line of duty. So that was a tough thing to kind of maybe reveal to my parents that that's what I wanted to do, especially for my dad, who had lost his dad being a policeman. But that's how I kind of got started. And I literally looked at who's hiring, and then put in applications at different cities. And one city said yes, and then it started a career. But that's how it all got started.
Good stuff. Glad to hear that. And what about you, John? What was your journey?
Kind of a similar path as Scott. I was young and wanted to find something with purpose, and I had some family members that were in law enforcement and the fire service, and so I had thought about joining the Marine Corps like Scott over here. And while I was waiting for during the delayed entry program, the Highway Patrol responded to my application. Back then, we didn't have the internet showing my age, so we had to write letters and fill out paper applications. So it was a little more of a lengthy process, but you being in California, you can relate to growing up watching Chips. That's kind of how I gravitated to the state, the Highway Patrol.
Yes, indeed. All right. And Scott Medlin, why don't you tell everybody real quick about your journey in law enforcement? Yeah, I hear you good. Yeah. Yep. We can hear you, but yep. Just go ahead and continue. We'll get that fixed. Go ahead. Continue with your story there.
One of my classmates, that was awkward always. And then after 12 years, I went part-time for family reasons, but also to be a speaker, author, and trainer for police officers and help them to take care of themselves, because unfortunately a lot are dying by suicide now.
Yeah, unfortunately. I think I got that squared away. So everybody in the audience, if you can hear Scott, why don't you sing something for us, Scott Medlin, real quick?
Oh, sing something. No, it's
yeah, sing something.
You to lose your audience.
Yeah, it's fixed. I just got a text that it's fixed.
Okay, good.
That
I just got a bunch of text taking care of you. You're good. You're
Alrighty,
saved.
awesome.
You were saved by the joke because I was waiting. I was gonna come in with harmony, but fine. It's fine.
No, I don't want you to lose people on this live stream.
Yeah. So we thank everybody for commenting here. We got Greg Wilson on YouTube says, thanks so much for being here to help facilitate this most important conversation. We agree with that. So everyone being police officers here, dealing with individuals in your respective jurisdictions, how often do you deal with minorities in your jurisdictions, your respective jurisdictions? I know you're up in Northern California, Scott, and like we said, John, that you're in the Highway Patrol, and Scott Medlin, you are in North Carolina. What sort of interactions do you have with minorities in your job, Scott Medlin?
It's the district that I worked for many years. It was at least 60-65% minority.
Okay.
And then we're at the university where I work part-time now. There's a good amount of minorities. I don't know percentage-wise, but I mean it's a very diverse student population.
Yeah. And you, John, I'm sure you've come across a minority, one or two in your day.
Yeah. In Florida, we're quite a diverse state, so we have quite a number of minorities represented. So in my community, I would say at least 15%. Most likely, we come in contact with people that have been a victim of a crime or a crash, or during traffic stops. But we have a predominantly area here that I would say makes up about 15%.
Yeah. Okay. And Scott, you being here in California, Scott Savage, I'm sure you've dealt with minorities on a daily basis.
Right. Yeah. The area that I work in is in the San Francisco Bay Area, and the particular county that I work in, I was reading a statistic the other day that said something like over 200 different languages are spoken at home as the primary language in this particular county, which kind of gives you an idea, right, of the makeup. This is a melting pot for sure. Everybody comes here, for a variety of reasons, and I think the predominant race, even in the city that I work, isn't white. So I would say that more often than not, we're interacting with people of sort of every ethnic makeup there is. This is definitely a melting pot area.
Right. Yeah. And then now we got. Yeah, go ahead, Elizabeth.
Oh, well, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, in your official capacity, obviously you deal with minorities on a daily basis. How about in your personal lives? Do any of you interact with African Americans in particular on a personal? Do you have friends? Do you have family members, where you go to barbecues or boys' night out or anything like that on a personal level? Anybody?
Yes, I've got friends who are Black, Hispanic, Indian, and I've got one. Now, you have a lot of people that you know and people that are acquaintances, people you can meet up with here and there, but most people can count on both their hands how many actual friends they have. When it comes down to the core of it. I've got one. He and I pretty much text back and forth like little girls at times, just kind of.
Wait a minute.
You stepped in
Wait
it
a
there.
minute. Wait a minute, Scott. Now,
We just
y'all
opened
text
Pandora's
like
box.
friends. Cause
Well,
I
we
don't
text like friends,
like
and we
Well, Elizabeth, he
just
said
kinda,
little
you know,
girls. He said little girls.
and
My
we
nieces
just kind of.
don't do that. They send emails, very professional, and expect a response in a timely manner in that conversation too.
I'm going off the girl drama text whenever I was a school resource officer and have to read the text. That's unfortunately what
Yep.
sometimes we start complaining when we get negative and have to vent. Yeah, he and I'll go off. But anyway.
Yeah, yeah. What about you, John
We're
or
bringing you back
Savage?
for another show, Scott.
Yeah.
That's fine.
We want to dive deeper, Scott, into that. Now, we have a lot of coworkers I work with. We have just a diverse state, and we have a diverse makeup of our agency. So that's pretty much who I would hang around with for the most part. My son, who's high school, his godfather is black. One of my good coworkers that I've known for the last 20 years. If I started to really dive deep into my relationships, we do have a lot of people that we have those conversations with.
Okay. And Mr. Savage?
Yeah, friends and family, both, from a wide variety of races, and I think it really speaks to the area I grew up in, right? And so I think, living in the Bay Area and living in California, while it does come with its challenges, especially for being a police officer, we've got some goofy laws and whatnot. But from just kind of being exposed to, a bunch of different types of people with different belief systems, different races and whatnot, I kind of count myself as lucky, right, to grow up here. And I've remarked before, if you're a racist and you live in the Bay Area, you must be unhappy all the time, because there's just people from all over here constantly. And so, it's really been one of the blessings, I think, of growing up in this area. It is so diverse.
So I kind of have a hard question for you all. And it's not on script, but more of like a transparent question, and maybe to help audience understand. So obviously in law enforcement, the last few years have been rough, right? Because a lot of things are brought to the forefront, and they're attached to a deeper issue that's been ongoing, right? So there's not just an isolated bad judgment call. It triggers the trauma of whatever it's attached to, right? So then it magnifies the act, or it magnifies the anger or whatever of your community, specifically your community of color. And so my question is, as you all have said that you have friends that are from the communities of color, outside of law enforcement, or even your friends in law enforcement, because I won't throw Dell out there, but I'll speak for me. The last few years have definitely put a demand on soul searching and really trying to reconcile some things, right? As a mother for Black sons, as a wife and a daughter, there's some things that I had to reconcile and have very hard conversations. How have you all navigated, two parts. How have you navigated those conversations if you've had to have them? And then, in those conversations, were you ever presented with something that, because of life experience, you may not have ever had that lens, and it maybe brought a different revelation? Or was it ever able to get there? Or were you as an officer, as a man, as a human, frustrated to the point where it was hard for you to have those conversations? So I don't know if we can start with Scott Savage and then kind of work our way across, whatever's easiest.
Sure. Yeah, I think I understand your question. To answer the last part, was it ever frustrating to have those conversations? No. But I don't know that I'm typical or representative of most officers, and I wouldn't pretend to speak for anyone else other than myself. But I think to the extent we can, the best thing our industry, right, the industry of police officers, the best thing we can do is be candid and be honest, right? And so, as opposed to sort of closing ranks and saying, well, those were just a few bad apples, or well, there's no this, and I'm not racist, and I've never met a racist cop, therefore there's no issue. that seems to be like a real typical response in law enforcement. And I don't know that that's helpful with anything. And so, being a white cop, it's real hard to even maybe enter the conversation and be like, hey, I've got something to say on the issue. They're like, sure you do, white cop. That you have to acknowledge that,
Right.
that people kind of see you as one way. And are there problems in law enforcement? Yeah, there's a lot. Are there issues and conversations that we have to have? Yeah, but most of the time, I don't find, and maybe the other panel has had better experience, but I would say most of the time people don't want to have the nuanced, subtle, challenging conversation where we can present rational facts and arguments and experiences. Most folks don't want to do that, right? Most people seem more interested in slogans and mottos and anecdotal
Hashtags.
Yeah, hashtags.
Because that's cool and that's sexy and that you can put that on a t-shirt. The real challenge comes, okay, what are we going to do about it? Right? What are the issues and what are we going to do about it? And I, take the George Floyd incident, right? Take any person who has a heart, any kind of empathy or feeling would have to look at that and just be, horrified, right? And so I know I certainly had conversations with, my loved ones, my family about that. And, I think we all just sat there and went, what's happening? What in the world was this person thinking? It's interesting though, from being a police officer and I'm a police trainer, I own a police training company. I looked at that and went, I can actually tell you why some of those things are happening. I can see written in the faces of some of these officers what's going on in the mind and why they're doing it. Because you're looking at that video going, well, why wouldn't you just get off of that? That
Right.
seems pretty obvious. You can look at it as a police officer and go, oh, he's suffering from contempt of cop. That's
That
why.
part.
He's going to do
That
the
part.
opposite of whatever you're telling him to do at that
Yep.
point. So no, I don't find the conversation difficult. I find it necessary. I just am not really interested in participating in conversations that are going to end with sort of emotional outbursts and arguments. There's a time for that, but I like sitting down like we're doing now and let's talk. Let's not agree on everything. Please don't just agree with me. Challenge me on. Actually, Scott, no, I think this is where the truth is. So.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Corporal
Thank
Schultz.
you.
Ever since I've been on, I've always been taught to, treat people with respect. And that's something that I came to the table before I was a police officer. I always looked at people as I put my pants on the same way that everybody else puts their pants on. And what I've also learned is that people want to be listened to. And it goes back to in a simple traffic stop, like Dale mentioned earlier, that I've done millions of times in my career. There's a lot of times that people disagree, but a lot of times they just want to express themselves. And when you shut someone down, you're not going to be able to have that dialogue. So I definitely agree with Scott that having these tough conversations is what's going to have an effect on healing both the white cops, the black communities, the black cops, and the white communities. That's how we're going to get through this together to make a difference. So, but going back to your question, you have to have those conversations to have the healing. As Scott pointed out, when I watched that video with George Floyd, the same thing came to mind as why isn't somebody jumping in? When I first came on back in the day, soon after Rodney King happened. And we in law enforcement caught a lot of pushback, obviously rightfully so, but it doesn't seem as amplified as it was this go around, and maybe it's because of the internet and people are more connected socially. But definitely maybe the conversation should have happened 25 years ago when Rodney King incident happened. But clearly these things that need to be addressed. There was times where I would assist other agencies and certain African communities where I worked, and they would ask me to take them to jail. They would not want the police department to take them to jail, just because out of fear of retribution on the way to the jail. And these and sometimes lately, one thing since George Floyd, we have made progress because those things don't happen. I don't get asked of recent to transport someone out of fear they're going to get whooped on the way to the jail by the agency. So, but those things happened in the past, and we gotta recognize that and then move forward, like you said. And so, but I think we have made progress in the last 30 years that I've been a trooper, and it's unfortunate that one incident. There's a lot of good people out there. I'm sure we all know people that have passed away on this job due to violence and trying to help others. And you hate for their memories to die in vain because of one incident or two incidents.
Yep. Agreed.
Good.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Well, when I started, several years before that, there was a young black man that had died while in police custody. He got pepper sprayed, and based on the facts I remember, he got pepper sprayed, but he was put in the back of a police car, but he was put on his stomach. And he was a large guy, and he ended up passing away. Well, there was a riot in my hometown. Well, the family didn't leave that city. I mean, and they have a lot of friends in that community. So when I started, even though it was several years after that incident, there was still a good majority of a community that remembered that incident. And so this is when every good police officer has to have respect for people, because everyone's human. The police officer is definitely not above anybody else, but also the power of empathy, to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to understand why they're thinking the way they're thinking. That can help lead to, one, a good peaceful interaction as best you can, but also to be able to connect and have those conversations. And I never really minded having conversations at all. The one time it did was in May of 2020, when that police officer, ex-police officer, who wore the same uniform that I was, that all of us are, and like, that was the first time I was actually embarrassed to be in uniform the next day when I arrived for day shift, because I walked into the public and I just felt like everyone was looking at me like they were looking at him. I mean, he dehumanized George Floyd. That was wrong, and that was hard for me to reach out. I knew it was necessary, but it was hard because it was like I felt like they were going to look at me like I was him. But when we did have those difficult conversations, I was calling community leaders, people that one person who very prominent in the a black lady who's very prominent in the school system. I called her. I said, what can we do? We've got to, we can't be silent about this issue, because it affected everybody across the country. And we had conversations, and she said, hey, I want you to come speak at my school. And there were other conversations after that incident, the Floyd incident that I had, and they were always very difficult, because I had a lot of explaining to do, even though it wasn't me. But with technology being the way it is, every police officer has to understand, and this is what I don't think some do, your uniform represents the whole country now, not just the town
Yep.
you work for, not just the officer to your left and right. And it takes a lot of empathy to be able to reach out and have those conversations. But I agree with Scott. I like them to be conversations, because nobody, and I mean nobody, gets anywhere if we get down to emotions, and it's just one negative after that. Like, I don't like when some in the law enforcement community say, when they hear Black Lives Matter, they say, well, Blue Lives Matter. Okay, that's just tit for tat.
Yes.
That's not gonna. Let's reach a solution here, okay? So that's my take on it.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
That's a really good point, because I was going to ask about that. Since you said that the Black Lives Matter, how Officer Savage and Corporal Schultz, how do you all feel when you hear the term Black Lives Matters? What does that translate for you, or what is your response in that process?
Yeah, I don't think. Oh, go ahead, John, please.
I was just going to say, it's hard for me to not think of all lives matter. And I'll just be honest with you, to me, because I don't look at, I'm going to help people regardless of their race or creed, whatever, sexuality, and whatever the issue may be. That's not on my mind when I see someone that needs help, and my fellow man or woman. And that's why that's the only issue I have with that is, to me, all lives matter. And I understand why the slogan came up, because of the incidents. But when we start looking at things, again, putting people in different silos, we're all part of the human race. I'm here not to just help one race. I'm here to help everybody and treat everybody fairly and respectfully. So that's my only issue with it. But is it gonna, if it moves the needle to have these conversations, then I'm all for it.
Yeah. Do you kind of understand, and you kind of said that you did, that what it means when people say Black Lives Matter is that before it seemed like they didn't matter. So now we have to kind of make sure that everyone knows, yes, just like white lives and brown lives and every other lives matter, that Black lives do matter. And that's really what that came from.
Right, and you know, Dale, at least in my 30 years, and I'll be honest with you on this platform, I've never worked with someone that didn't not say Black Lives Do Not Matter or treated people, and at least with my agency, the way maybe it's the way we're trained. We have our own academy, and we have our own set of training, but I never heard a fellow coworker disrespect just because of the race of their skin. It was more of the actions of, someone that got in a fight, and it was more of the character, the actions of one than just blatantly just because of a person's skin color, Hispanic, female, or whatnot.
Yep. Okay. Scott Savage?
Yeah, I think it's a sad state of affairs that anyone has to come up with a slogan like that, because like Dale, you pointed out, Black people don't feel like their lives mattered, and the folks that came up with that slogan didn't feel like that was an obvious statement, and so that's probably why the statement was, whoever came up with it, that's why they came up. But that's a pretty sad state of affairs that is what people feel like. I would agree with the other Scott, and when people get into a slogan matching kind of thing, just not interested in it. To me, it can become juvenile, in many ways. So I think obviously Black people's lives matter, deeply, and as everyone's life matters deeply. I think where the negative rub has come in lately is that there's a group called Black Lives Matter, right? And they've, some of the things that I've read about maybe some of the folks that are espousing, at least to be representative of that group, have had some troubling issues, of course. But putting that aside, the notion is, well, of course, of course. And as police officers, I think, whoever decided that they were going to make the Blue Lives Matter thing or get into All Lives Matter, whoever those folks are that kind of came up with that, I guess, they're again having an emotional argument saying, well, police officers have been killed and, and their lives matter too. And I think, that maybe fails to understand kind of the emotion right behind that. But again, I think rather than having slogan-y type debates, I think for those of us who are interested in making changes, right? You want that's what people are asking for, right? The public is asking, hey, we'd like the police to do some things differently, right? We work at the pleasure of the public, so that's a reasonable request. I'm actually more focused on that because I think it's actually harder to do. It would be very easy right now, and I think we could all come up with slogans or mottos or 8 can't wait or hashtags or anything that is easy to remember, and that's great, from an advertising standpoint. But if we as a society would like some things changed, that's actually much more difficult to do. Here's what's not going to work. You're not going to regulate our way out of this. Here in California, we have a new law seemingly every week. In 2020, we dramatically changed the way police officers are able to use force. And there's a bill on the governor's desk right now about ending something called qualified immunity. And, qualified immunity, I sit back and laugh when I watch people try to define what that is in the news, in the media, because I don't think I've yet to hear an accurate description of it. You can actually look it up. It's a well-known, legal doctrine that applies to public officials too. So are we getting rid of qualified immunity for the cops? What about politicians? Well, who cares about that? There I go with those facts again. But back to your point, I I understand, people's views on both sides of that. It's not something that I concern myself with because I'm much more interested in, okay, how are we going to make actual, real changes, and what is the expectation of the public? What are the issues? What does the data say? What does the science say? How are we going to train officers differently? Those are the much more difficult and I think important conversations to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know we have other questions. I want to stay here because I think it's a big part. Because, as Corporal Schultz said, the officers, at least that I've been blessed with, most of them, Dale, and I'm pretty sure many of you all have been blessed to work with, genuinely come out to make an impact, to come out to do the right thing. But also, as a representative of a community of color, there is still a reality that you're asking me to prove a ghost to you. And so, like, you use terms like systemic racism and things like, or Black Lives Matter, and instantly officers are often triggered because it's taken as an attack against your character, when in fact the system of policing was established far before us, and you and I molded into what it is to be effective to our community, right? So the way policing goes up north versus Central California, Southern, or even in New York is going to be contingent on the communities we serve, right? Because different populations, different needs. That being said, I think that for us as law enforcement officers, as you said before, empathy is important, but it's almost, for me as a person of color, and not a personal attack, but it's almost as, when they're saying Black Lives Matters, it's because historically in America it hasn't, right? From the inception of our country, they haven't. They have for 400 years been sold as cattle, raped, beaten, been abused, and then comes Jim Crow, and then comes a few more other laws, and then you have the redlining and other things that have been put in place to constantly keep a group that was basically always been taught, like in all of our stuff, we've been taught these things that create, even the term minority, that diminish the humanity or the value of people, right? Not anything you created, not anything I created, but it is what we were born in and what we have operated in. And to the ability that we can, we have made changes. We have done the right thing to the ability that we can. But some things are bigger than just what I can do, what you can do, is what I'm saying. And so I think that as law enforcement people, we have to be able, like you all have done, acknowledge there's discrepancies and broken systems so that we can do the hard healing and have the hard conversations. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, I don't think
Mhm.
that just being good people is enough, right? Like, I don't think that's enough. I think that we have to be good people with good intentions and activate and be active in doing that, starting with these conversations. But then how do we have those conversations? Like, there'll be homes that this conversation will meet, but you can take it to that home. And so, like, being intentional to learn the things that aren't comfortable or have those conversations, I think are huge in us making that impact, so that the narrative changes forever, so that the progress we've made in 30 years is doubled in less
Mhm.
time going forward, if that makes sense. I don't Do you have any feedback, or does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And I think when you talk about the whole system as a whole, law enforcement, the judges, the prosecutors, we all have to work together. It just sometimes I think law enforcement gets lumped into a negative light a lot of times, and rightfully so at times. But as part of the whole system, like it's just law enforcement. But there's other things that come into play to the whole system that needs. And I don't want to. A lot of people throw around the word reform, but maybe it needs to be looked at to where. The people and the systems that are being in place now maybe could be changed to factor in some of the things that you just mentioned, Elizabeth, because we are, when I arrest someone, I for the most part, never see the individual again. But they are part of a system that that they're going to deal with many people in the criminal justice system. So, and I think that gets lost when we have the conversation with regular people outside of law enforcement or the criminal justice system, that that it is a bigger cog than just law enforcement. People plea out. Like I said, Dale and you both being police officers, you'll arrest someone, and unless they go to trial, you'll probably never see that person again, unless you see them back in your community. I don't work. I work a very large area, so I don't have those interactions every day with the same people as other officers of other jurisdictions. But most likely, I'll probably never see that person again. So.
Yeah, agreed. And then on the heels of that, we were talking about slogans, and Black Lives Matter came out of, the George Floyd incident. Another slogan that came out of that was defund the police. Defund the police. And we were talking about training. Scott, you were talking about it. Officer Savage, you were talking about that earlier, training officers to do certain ways. And we can't train our ways out of this. What do you guys feel about when you hear the term defund the police? What does it make you feel? And what do you think about that term? We'll start with you, Scott Medlin.
When that slogan did come out, I didn't agree with it because, and I still don't, in the sense that if you want police to change, if you want them more well trained, or you want them to be different, then we all know in the law enforcement community it's going to take money. And if you don't have the money, then, but yet on the flip side of that, if certain calls that police have been going to can be handled by other sectors to prevent a use of force, then I'm all for it. Put the money towards that. But it just seemed like the big cities were the first to jump on defunding the police, and we see a spike in crime, and now they're refunding the police, it seems.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
I'm all about, and in the law enforcement community, there's like that phrase about police officers hate change, but yet they hate the way things are. And we're people, and we can never be perfect. We always have to evolve to be as excellent as we possibly can be, and just keep on striving for that, because we're not going to be perfect. So police departments are never going to be perfect. They have to evolve. Police departments cannot say, well, this is the way we've always done things. This is the way we're going to continue to do them. And in order to change, I believe it's going to take that big training budget. On the surface, no, taking the money away from the police, based on the statistics I've seen, the rise in crime, I don't agree with defund the police flat out. I agree with other ways to approach it for solutions.
Yep. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think that term, defund the police, is basically what are people trying to say with that? They're trying to say we don't like the return on our investment, right? Most police departments most cities spend the majority of their general fund on public safety, so police and fire, and the customers, the taxpayers, are saying, we don't like the return we're getting for that. We don't want to give you that money anymore. We want it to go somewhere else, or we can try to get something a little bit better. So as far as responding to the mentally ill or homeless people or whatever, we'd like some other entity to do that, right? And so to the extent that that's the meaning, that they don't believe that the police should be the primary responder to the mentally ill in crisis or homeless people, I 1000% agree. I've been a cop for 22 years, and I don't remember raising my hand and saying, I think we should be the ones to go deal with people that are mentally ill in crisis. Modern medicine can't fix it. People's own family can't fix these problems, but we'll call a 25-year-old cop with a gun on his hip and say, why don't you go deal with this homeless people or this mentally ill person? So I think that's a great idea, to dump those monies into something that is a more lasting solution, right? In the middle of the night, if there's no dog catcher on, who do they call? The police.
The police.
Somehow the police became sort of this like default entity that will just respond to anything else that there isn't a primary response model for. So I agree with that. Here's the rub, though. If we still want, as a society, to have something called the police, whether it's the folks on this panel, or you fire us all and you start over, or you just want some social network that's going to go out and do things with people that are in crisis or that are having a bad day, those folks are going to need to get trained, and it's going to be very expensive. So that money is just going to go right back into it. If you want to keep the police how they are now, you just want to maybe make them better at what they do. It's going to take a lot more money, right? Because training is very expensive. And unlike the military that will, special units will train for 2 months, 3 months to go deploy for one, right? That doesn't happen in police work. We are constantly deployed all the time. And then every now and then we send the cops to a little bit of training, and then we wonder why, we see what we see on the news. So it would actually be very expensive to do it. If we just wanted to save a whole lot of money, I think, and this will never happen, but why does every little city need their own police department? Why are there 60,000 police departments in the U.S.? Why is there 60,000 chiefs, 60,000 training units, 60,000 SWAT teams, 60,000 command vehicles? Why do we need so much duplication? If it was more standardized, more regionalized, where we just had like metropolitan police agencies or state police agencies or something along those lines, you wouldn't need the constant duplication you see, right? Not every little town needs their own building and their own this and their own that. Now, how do you take that all and restart over? I don't know. You'd have to find someone much smarter than me. But I think there's a million ways to save money and do it. And if we're not going to do that, we're just going to kind of keep everyone, 60,000 departments. Then let's just agree on like the 10 things you want cops to be really good at. Let's just agree on 10 things you want them to be good at, because what we've done is watered down what police officers do. Every year we're training them to be something else. Now they're taking a class in human trafficking. Now they're taking a class in terrorism. After 9/11, we suited up officers in hazmat, in hazardous material gear, right? And they're going to go be hazmat response. Next year, we'll become experts in something else. And what we've done is we've watered down what police work has become. So now, oftentimes, we're not good at the basics, right? If I were king, I would say, listen, I want the cops to be good at taking someone who's resisting arrest into custody safely. I want them to be very skilled at that, not fight panically, not get all emotional and start, beating somebody. I want you to be very skilled at taking somebody into custody. But again, all those things that I just mentioned are very difficult to do, very hard to do, would require a huge financial investment. And it's a lot easier to just go, let's just have a slogan, defund the police.
Yeah. Let me talk about something that you just brought up. Let me just talk about something that you brought up real quick there, Scott. You were talking about the, taking someone into custody safely. What brought us to this conversation that we're having now is one, George Floyd, and other incidents that happened beyond that, where the public sees, and this is really based on the media, but they see officers handle someone who's African American getting their lives taken, where someone in a similar situation that's not African American being taken into custody safely. The reason why I kind of brought up that earlier, if you interact with people, African Americans outside of work, wasn't to put you on the spot, but just to ask you if you kind of know some of the nuances of some African Americans, how some of us, are expressive and our culture, and some of us speak loudly, and it's not meant as a threat. And that's why I brought that up. How can some of that training be brought to the fore in any of our agencies, in any of our law enforcement duties here? Anybody here?
Well, I mean, you're going to have to identify the curriculum, and you're going to have the right instructor. Back in '94, we had a human diversity course for our agency, which we were thinking about human diversity back in the '90s, and so it was led by an African American trooper, and he would go around to the various districts and train the troopers and have these type of conversations we're having now. And so I think the knowledge is power. The more you interact, the more you, and I think maybe that's like within, our agencies that deal with a lot of, crashes and victims, the travel and traffic stops. I've interviewed so many people in my career, just on normal one-on-one, no confrontation, just your normal everyday conversations. And then when someone is outside the norm, that sends up red flags for us, right? As all cops,
Mhm.
we know to watch their hands. And those are the hands are what's going to kill you. It's not their voice, it's not their mouth, it's their hands and what they put into their hands. And so, but if you train and have all these interactions, the more interactions you have with people, the more experienced you're going to be, and you're going to recognize these things. Unfortunately, I think when you were talking about the defunding the police, I agree with Scott Squared. You want to increase
We
the
got a new
foundation.
hashtag.
Yeah.
Scott
You
Squared,
want
yeah.
to increase the training. When I first came on, we had institutions where we kept the homeless or the mentally ill, who now
Yeah.
are our homeless population. We had hospitals where we institutionalized. Back in the mid '90s, due to budget cuts, all those individuals made it to the streets, and then as we talked earlier, we're the ones that have to I don't want to say clean up the mess, but we're the ones that have to deal with it. And so that's what it is, and it's just a fact of life. The water main breaks at 3 in the morning. No one calls the water department because no one's there at the water department. They call the police. And so I think going back to your question, Dale, you need to find the right people to deliver the right message, and that's going to take training, and it's going to take money and funding. We talk about the federal government want to interact with us. All of us, we haven't talked about it, but I'm sure Scott Savage could talk to us about how recruiting has tanked over the last year and a half since the George Floyd incident. And in recruiting, the federal government wants to throw money around. What about the idea of maybe subsidizing salaries to where we can offer a living wage, a higher living wage, and attract these quality people to do this very tough job. The communities set a high standard of what they want us to do and how to interact with people. And as Scott mentioned about how to engage and take someone into custody without putting a hand on them. Well, that's using your mouth. And I alluded to it before, verbal judo, and trying to get people to comply without violence. And that's what the
Mhm.
goal should be, but it's going to take money, and we want to find the very best people we can find to do this job. And so it's the difficult conversation to have because as we talked about earlier, taking things away is easy. It's a fancy slogan, but it should be increased funding because you're always gonna need the police, and you're gonna
Always.
have to have someone out there on that front line dealing with. Each community is gonna have their different stripes, what makes them tick. Um, when I came on, I went to Sarasota, Florida. Hurricane Andrew came, and I went to Miami. And from Sarasota to Miami, that was a world of difference. And what that community standards was highly different than the community standards of the city of Sarasota. So in my years of doing my job, I've been blessed where I could travel around areas and see what different communities have to offer and what they accept and do not accept. So it's something that we have to have those conversations, and it's nothing that defunding is going to take care of. We're going to have
Yeah.
to go the other route.
Agreed. Agreed.
That's good. Thank you so much.
And another thing
If I
that
may add, oh,
go ahead, Scott. Medlin.
okay, well, yes, if I may add, I think it was about 2015 or 2016. I had been on it on about several years at that point. I had my first class for the bias, and call me naive if you want to. I didn't know that everybody, you can't defeat it. You're going to have a subconscious form of bias. So when that training came about, and they told us, hey, you have to understand facts, and you are going to have bias, and it was like, oh, and it just brought about also the fact that we are human, and that was effective. So I think that training like that, and then the training that John had mentioned, but all this has to happen with a training budget. So it does come down to money. But yes, with more training on the human interaction part of policing, it can help a lot of people as well. And when it comes to hiring, I know that recruiting's been very tough for police departments, and I was no recruiter by any means, but I'm really wondering because a chief that I have connected with over the last year talked about police departments really need to look into how effective their hiring process is with vetting candidates that become or applicants that become actual police officers. I mean, how much do people look into the police recruiters? How much do they look into what kind of setting this person was brought up in? I mean, are they uncomfortable around people that are different than them? I mean, I took for granted
Right.
how my dad had a ton of rental houses in different kinds of neighborhoods, and it was nothing for me to interact with Hispanics, black people. I just took it for granted. And when I got to policing, I actually met some officers who were uncomfortable around black people, and I mean, I was like, well, you're in the right district because you're going to have to get over that real quick. They weren't racist. It was just something different.
Yeah.
And I believe that we do need to look into these people that are being hired as police officers. Like, are you used to dealing with a lot of different kinds of people? Because I would hate for them to get thrown off guard and then something bad happen. And I hope that makes sense.
It
It
does.
does.
It does.
One of the things, since education is a great equalizer, and emotional intelligence and what EQI and those tests,
Yep.
I would love to see them more in the application process for hiring of police officers. That would give you a little bit of what you talked about, Scott, a little bit of insight. But they're not cheap. They're not cheap personality tests, and that's why a lot of agencies obviously don't use them because of the money situation. But that may give some insight into someone's background, their empathy level, their self-regulation, and their self-awareness. All things that you need as good law enforcement officers.
Spot on.
I think to
Spot
the
on.
Yeah.
to the point about training and for recruiting, one thing that I'm sure your viewers, if they're not police officers, they may not be aware of this, that there's very little science involved in police work, right? There's very little data driven, evidence based, very little of that. In police work, whether it's recruiting, whether it's training, it's a lot of just like anecdotal good ideas, or that's the way we've always done it. And there's very little research and science into, like the other Scott mentioned, the best way to hire somebody, or what is emotional intelligence? How do we test for that? I'll give you a couple examples. When I was hired on as a police officer in 1999, I took a battery of tests in California: a psych test, a polygraph, a written test, a physical test, a couple of interviews, right? And then 4 years ago, I lateraled, meaning went from one agency over to another agency, and I, had to go through their application process. It was the exact same test. And I mean, I think I took it in the same building. It was the same questions. And it occurred to me that, do you mean in almost 20 years, the science hasn't changed? There's been no research that's informed how we should test police officers. There's no kind of new tests based on the latest research. It hadn't changed in 20 years. The testing process is, I'm sure there's a mountain of data that we could explore that would help inform how we should be testing police officers. Do we really believe do we really believe that the way we're testing police officers is the be all end all procedure? Like, man, it just can't be improved. No. Do we really believe that the way we train those police officers is based on science, evidence, research, data? If most, analysts or scientists looked at the way we do things, they'd be like, you guys just kind of come up with a good idea and it just sort of sticks around for 100 years, right? The way we're teaching firearms, has that been vetted? Has anyone done like research into that? There's a very quiet push in the law enforcement training world right now about evidence-based procedures, evidence-based policing, evidence-based training. And, most cops and most administrators aren't going to take the time to read that research, right? And like, hey, what does the data say we should be doing? Instead, law enforcement just blows in the wind, right? Today, it's, dealing with a community of color. Next week, it'll be a new crisis, right? Before that, it was human trafficking, then it was terrorism, then it was drugs, then autism awareness poked its head up, and we just kind of like blow in the wind. And I think, personally, we should be looking at, what does the science say? What does the data say? You watched the George Floyd trial, you heard them if you watched it. The police trainers and the chief, the question they asked were, how many hours of training did Derek Chauvin get on, X, first aid, defensive tactics? How many hours of training did he get? And then the officer would dutifully say, well, he got, 4 hours, or he got 6 hours. And the chief got up, how many hours of de-escalation training? Well, he got 8. Did anyone ever ask, did he learn anything? Did anyone ever say, okay, you're saying how many hours he sat in a classroom? That's great. His name is on a roster. I have a new question for you. Did he learn anything? How was that proven or vetted? How did you prove, Chief, that the training you gave him was good and meant and it was designed to improve his performance in the field, right? That's the point of training. We don't care what the training is, if it's 8 hours, 16 hours. We're trying to improve performance in the field. Is there any data to suggest that? The other Scott mentioned implicit bias. Yes, all humans have biases, of course. That anyone with half a brain would know that. And now there's a big push to give cops implicit bias training. I have a question. Has that implicit bias training ever been shown to change performance in the field? So you're going to give some company, and I own a law enforcement training company. I shouldn't be telling you this, right? I want to sell, spots in our class more than anybody. But are you going to give money to some company to go provide training that looks good on paper? Hey, it's 16 hours of implicit bias. Okay. How is that training being vetted? And are we sure it's going to do anything for us? Or is it just another class? And I'm sure John and Scott will, and you guys too, you're both police officers. We go to training all the time. Sexual harassment training. Sit in front of the computer and push next and try to get through it. Oh, okay. Terrorism training. Okay. And are you learning anything? I think that's the big question we need to start asking.
Yep. Ben Kelso on LinkedIn says effectiveness in training. So kind of going what you're talking about there.
Yeah. What is effective? What does good look like? Amen.
And VVV on Facebook says, love what Officer Savage is bringing up. All truths. All truths.
Right back at you.
Agreed. And lastly, real quick, another thing that came up due to the George Floyd thing was how the media portrays law enforcement incidents. Mostly, law enforcement interactions with officers, with communities of color. How do you believe their interactions, the way they portray law enforcement has affected, for one, recruitment, or officers that are out there on the job not really wanting or being able to do their job effectively for fear of they're going to be on, the next, I wouldn't say Chauvin because he actually did something wrong, but just they're going to be a viral video next. Do you think the way the media portrays us has anything to do with that?
Well, I think if you understand their business model, Dale, they're about clicks, and they're driven by clicks for their advertising. And if they can show more traffic to their website, I don't think they're really going to care about whether you're right or wrong. It's unfortunate. It's not even just with policing. It's with any kind of politics, any kind of story that they're trying to drive. So it's unfortunate. Like you said, the Chauvin case, rightfully so. But in a case where you have an issue that comes up and then there may be some kind of controversy surrounding it, and then whether that controversy is true or not, they're going to throw that out there, and then if it becomes different later on, then you'll never hear about it again. But if they see that it's been, I've seen stories. I'm very aware of the news, especially the local news. You see news and they'll change the title on the internet of the story. So I'll see a story one, then it's just I click on it again, and it's the same story, but they rephrased the title, and to try to get more people to click on it. And I think it's a disingenuous business model, to be honest with you, because it puts people. It doesn't care about communities. It doesn't care about the individual. All it cares about is how much they can charge. So.
Yeah, but do you guys, any of you find that any of this negative publicity, this viral mode, will make officers hesitant to actually do anything on the street? What they would have normally done to take someone into custody safely, and now they're endangering themselves, they're endangering their contact. Do you guys find any of that?
Oh, I mean, I saw a video on the internet where an officer literally was chasing a man through a pharmacy store. The guy dropped a gun, and the guy then reached for the gun again while there's people in the store. The officer didn't do what he needed to do. Now, fortunately, that man decided not to kill anybody with that gun, but that newer officer didn't do anything. And then backup arrived and did what they had to do, and the man survived. But yeah, there was hesitant. He hesitated, and a lot of people, including himself, could have been killed. Yes, I've seen it where people were getting out of control. They were under arrest. You told them you were under arrest. They were under arrest, and then the fight ensued. It's like, well, you have to take control of the situation. But yeah, so I mean, I've seen it. I can only speak off my experience, and I hate that that there has been hesitancy to act to protect the public because they don't want to be the next story, however the media will portray them.
Yep, 100.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think police officers in America would be probably well served. I don't know to be hesitant is the word, but they would be well served to be very cautious about what they're doing starting now. The public perception of the way police officers are doing something, even if it's lawful and just, can drive the narrative, right? Drive the narrative. And in no other time before, police officers are facing criminal exposures to where in the past we used to worry about things like getting sued. Well, really what we meant was the department getting sued, right? And now police officers I don't know that they're so much worried about being sued anymore. They're being worried about being put in prison. And so there has been a pendulum swing in how police officers' actions are judged, especially here in California. We have a new law that that is very restrictive on the ways officers can use force. And so while there may have needed to be some changes, in many ways, things have swung almost to an impossible standard. If you read our new use of force laws and you have kind of the capacity to understand what some of them are saying, you're going, well, gee, that's beyond human performance limitations. I'm actually not a superhero. I'm not a robot. I wouldn't know how to do that. What you're saying I should be able to do. And so I think in many ways officers should be cautious. And I'm hoping that none are hesitant to defend themselves if they're under attack or ambush. But as far as jumping into a fray to defend another person in California, the law may not be on your side. And I don't know that the average sort of voter in California knows what they voted for on that, right? I think that they wanted the police to act a little bit differently, especially on videos, when they're using force, and they may have voted some laws in that seemed good, but now you're going to have officers go, oh, okay, listen, I'm not going to get involved in this or this or this because I honestly don't want to go to prison or be like,
Right.
facing any kind of civil or criminal exposure. So
Yeah.
you're probably, I don't have any statistics to back this up, but you're probably going to see officers start pulling back on what they choose to get involved with, right? Because what the citizens don't really know, and most police officers can't speak about eloquently, is something called the public duty doctrine, which in a nutshell basically says that the police don't have a legal obligation to do much, right? They don't have to protect you. That's not a legal standard. They choose to do a lot, and they have awful lot of discretion. And so a lot of officers are going to start going, I don't think I'm going to get involved in this or that. And, that's unfortunate, but that's only natural. You can't put people, whether they're police officers or not, in almost unwinnable circumstances, like violent confrontations, and ask them to somehow, some way, make it look good on video or talk everyone into handcuffs. It's just not possible, right? If you know anything about de-escalation and you know how people with contaminated thought processes work, you know that we're going to have to go hands-on with some people. We're going to have to fight them. It's just that is a that's been around since the dawn of time. Since there have been humans, there's been human conflict. So I think cops nowadays need to be aware of that. Has it impacted our recruiting? Probably to some extent. And I think we, the law enforcement industry, is maybe just as to blame as the media is. And by that, I mean, look at any department's recruiting video. Just go on any department's Facebook page or Instagram page. Are they honestly telling an accurate story of what a police officer is going to do, right? You pull up I'm going to pull up all of our Instagram pages for our departments right now. It's like coffee with a cop. Here's a cop buying lemonade. Come pet our German shepherds. They're super friendly. No, they're not. They're very unfriendly. They bite people. And then you watch our recruiting videos and it's
They're
like
evil.
Yeah, right. I don't pet those things. But watch our recruiting videos. It's all like action-y and like SWAT-y and like helicopters and then it's like walking through the park handing like stickers out to kids. And then
no
like
reports.
CSI.
No, 8 hours of report writing.
Right. No overtime at 3 a.m. and you gotta go. You're trying to go on vacation, but you can't make it because you got to get these in custodies in, or dealing with the deputies when you're in booking and they're angry.
Yep. And we have people putting in to be cops that they're like, hey, I want to work on CSI or I want to be on SWAT because that's what I saw in your video. You're like, yeah, listen, we're interviewing for dude or dudette who's going to work patrol in the middle of the night, dealing with like the crazy naked guy who no one else wants to deal with, like
covered in feces.
Is that what? Now we
Covered
can't
in
make
feces,
that video.
yep.
No, they can't. They can't shoot that video. But I'm just telling you, like,
nobody will sign up for that.
Yeah, but we're being unrealistic just as much as the media is, in my opinion.
All right, gentlemen, this was a great conversation, insightful. Love the conversation. I love that we had some audience and great. We're not all the way over yet, but I do want to thank you guys for coming in because this was a great conversation. But we kind of want to lighten it a little bit and play a little game for you guys here. Let me get everything set up here for you. And this game here is
set up. I again want to thank you all for just having hard conversations. There are text messages coming in on my phone, which is why and people were very grateful for your transparency and your willingness to just talk and share and educate, right? So I'm very grateful and thank you all for just sharing your heart and just helping us to build bridges and to become better officers and individuals. So thank you.
Yes,
thank you.
In 9/12 of 01, a lot of Americans came together and regardless of their backgrounds, regardless of how they looked or whatever, and came together and helped each other through hard times. 9/12 of 21, here we are, Americans coming together and helping each other through tough times. I mean, this is what it's all about. Right. It's been an honor being on this podcast.
All right. So but don't go away yet. Don't go away yet because we got a game for you. This game is called You Got My Back and I Got Yours. All right. So since we're talking about working together, cops in the community together. I want to see what you guys' movie knowledge of dynamic duos in cop movies or cop TV shows. So if you guys know anything like that, the winner today will get a beautiful black and blue t-shirt, just like this one here. So I expect you guys to fight it out fiercely for that. And if you guys out there want one of your own shirts just like that, go ahead to the Black and Blue website at blackandblue.us. You can see Elizabeth there donning the cover there. And if you go there and you click on, we get there, you see Elizabeth there, you click on merch store. Click on the merch store and you will be taken to all of our merch there. So you see the shirt right there. And we've got a whole bunch of other merch. We got some hoodies, we got tank tops and other t-shirts and other designs. So be sure you go there and check it all out, all right? All right. So let's get to it. So Elizabeth, go ahead and explain it to them.
All right. So gentlemen, I'm going to read some clues to iconic buddy cops from movies and television. If you think you know who it is who I'm describing, just shout out your name. Your name will be your buzzer. For Scott, you will have to use your last name.
Okay.
I will acknowledge whoever said their name first and allow you to guess. The guess can either be a movie or a TV show title or the names of the two main characters. If you're correct, you'll receive a point. If you're incorrect, another guest can have the opportunity to steal. The guest with the most correct answers will win the game and the beautiful merchandise to rep Black and Blue. Are you gentlemen ready to begin?
Let's do it.
All right. So here is your first set of clues. J. K. Aliens. Neuralizer. dressed in dark colored suits?
Scott, right here.
John.
Men in Black. Oh, yeah,
All right.
No,
Scott.
Savage.
Yeah, Men in Black. Men in
Savage.
Black.
There you go. All
Oh.
right.
Oh, what's happening?
Which one
Yeah,
got that one for you?
that's
The black suits, right?
Savage got it. Yes.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Next
our
one.
Next one. LAPD detective, Chinese police inspector. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? Never cut the black man's radio. The time of day when everybody's trying to get home from work. Don't get caught in traffic.
I forget the name of the movie. I know.
Me too.
Can I say the actors?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can say the actors. Go ahead, man. Who are the actors?
Was it Jackie Chan and Chris? Their last name?
Tucker.
Yes,
Yeah.
Tucker, yes.
Tucker.
Rush Hour.
Rush Hour, yeah.
Right.
Didn't think of it.
All right, here we go. The next one. Small Town Cop. Aunt Eve. One Bullet. Iconic director appeared as a
John.
child.
John.
Go ahead, John.
Andy Griffin.
Nice.
Yes, Andy Griffith
Nice.
Show.
All right, all
here
tied
we
up
go.
at one.
Yep, everybody's on board. All right. FBI agent. Real life brothers. Fake sisters. Fake Caucasian.
Medlin.
Comedian.
Medlin,
Okay,
Medlin.
Then I got it.
Go ahead.
White Chicks.
Yes.
Nice.
Then I get Wayans Brothers, that's right.
The Wayans
Yes,
brothers, yep.
Wayans. All right, here we go. Sunny California. Motorcycles. Crashes.
John.
The 70s. Go ahead,
John.
John.
Chips.
Yes.
You better know that one, John.
I had.
All right.
I would've
Let-
loved
Next
hold on,
one.
let's get that full screen for you there, John. There you go.
There you go. There you go. Represent. NYPD comedy. Desk Pop. Elf actor.
Medlin.
Calvin Klein. Okay, go ahead.
It's my favorite.
Medlin?
I reference in my YouTube videos. The Other Guys.
Yes.
Nice.
Awesome movie.
Yes, it is.
Highly
funny.
recommend.
You were a pimp. No, okay. All right. Smooth single guy detective. Family man detective partner. Miami. Good men, but the title says something. What you gonna
John.
do when they come for you?
John.
Go ahead, John.
Miami Vice.
No.
Oh, that's cops. That's-
Oh, I got it.
Okay, Medlin.
Bad Boys.
Bad Boys.
Okay.
That was Medlin. Medlin got it, though.
Medlin,
Oh.
Medlin got okay.
Yep, Medlin put his
All
hand
right,
up
so
first,
Bad
though.
Boys, yep. Okay. All right, next one. Unexplained phenomenon. Conspiracy. FBI agent. Scully and Mulder. Blank
John.
wants the spot for these five. Go ahead, John.
X-Files.
Yes.
Nice.
That show had me tormented at night. I couldn't go to bed.
I bet you
All right. It was scary.
For
All right,
reference, we
next
got
one.
Medlin's got 4, John's got 3, and Savage, you only got 1. Come on, get on the board here.
No, I don't watch it.
Get some
enough.
more.
I gotta watch some more.
You need some more Netflix and chill in your life.
I do. Honestly.
All right, the next one. 80s. Fast cars. Drug deals. Stylish clothing. Trendy
John.
music. Go ahead, John.
Miami Vice.
Yeah.
That one's Miami Vice.
Yeah, I knew it had to be there.
They were coming up. Iconic. All right. A TV show based on the LAPD in the 60s. The first real portrayal of everyday patrol officers. Call sign.
John.
Go ahead,
Adam
John.
Flow. Adam Flow.
Yes.
John taking the lead there,
John
5 to
knows his
4.
stuff.
Handle it.
Yeah.
Listen.
I was around when that came out.
Nice.
You were just starting when that came out, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. A TV show made into a movie. 70s. Detectives Huggy Bear. Red Gran Torino with the white
John.
stripe. Go ahead, John.
Starsky and Hutch.
Yes.
He's killing it.
Kill it.
I don't watch
again.
one.
All right. Next one. Rapper turned actor. Son played him in the story of his life. Stand-up comedian or stand-up comic turned actor. Short. When you take a civilian out to observe law enforcement activity, they go on a.
John
Memphis, I guess.
Go ahead, John.
Right along.
Yes.
Kevin Hart. He's funny as hell.
Most of the time. Most
I
of
don't
the
think
time.
Kevin wants you to call him short, Dale. I think he's gonna be offended.
If he's watching
Okay,
right now.
next one. LAPD Patrol. Both actors played in Marvel movies, Spider-Man, Far From Home, and Ant-Man. Partially shot documentary style. One died. EOW.
Oh, Scott.
Go ahead, Scott.
End to watch.
Yes.
Boom.
Boom.
Coming for
Got you
John.
another one. That's a great movie too.
He said I'm up. He said I'm up. All right, next one. Serial killer. Deadly Sins. One actor was married once to one actor had a wife named Jennifer Aniston, and then he got a wife named Angelina Jolie. The other actor played the U.S. president and God. Famous
John.
quote, "What's in the box?" Go ahead, John.
Oh, I thought you wanted the actor. It's Morgan Freeman. Seven Deadly Sins.
7.
Close enough.
We'll give it to you.
7. Okay.
Yeah, remember that? What's in the box? Yeah, that's the end of that movie.
That's a good
Oh,
movie. That's a good movie.
yeah, it is.
You gotta be making a list, Scott. You're gonna have to do all these movies on Hulu. So. All right. The next one. One partner becomes unstable after the death of his wife. One partner has a wife and kids and welcomes the unstable partner into their lives. Hashtag everybody. Okay. One of the partners had a mullet hairdo. Classic movie made into not so classic TV show. One of the partners frequently said, "I'm getting too old for this," and then there's cussing.
Scott. It's a
Go ahead,
lethal weapon.
Scott.
Lethal
Yes.
weapon.
It is
Boom.
Lethal Weapon.
All right. Final question. This last dynamic duo is actually a terrific trio. Out of Detroit, 90210, Banana in the Tailpipe, instrumental
Scott.
theme song,
Beverly Hills Cop.
Oh,
Beverly
We'll give it to you, Scott. We'll give it to you, Scott.
You can give it to Scott.
We'll give it to
Yeah.
you, Scott,
Okay,
because
doesn't matter,
nobody,
he's gonna win anyway.
yeah, nobody caught
Yeah.
John. John,
Nobody.
you are the winner.
Nice job.
hey! Oh! It's your new ringtone, John. Go
Yeah,
up.
All right, that was fun. Yeah, John knows his
Everything.
movies and TV, right?
To a certain point. I don't know a lot of
Yeah, it's all good. That was fun. So we're glad you guys got into that. Real quick before we get you out of here, closing thoughts that you want the audience to know about. Hold on, let me turn off that game music there.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
that was-
like ready to run
Yeah.
for like Armageddon.
Yeah, the
right
game is
now.
over. The game is over. All right.
Like, under the pressure.
All right. So anything you want the audience to know about on the way out? We'll start with you, Scott Savage.
Oh, no, thank you for the conversation. It was great. Let's continue to have subtle, nuanced, rational conversations and skip all the slogans and stuff like that. It's too important not to.
Absolutely. And you, John?
Just to piggyback off Scott, I mean, the rational conversation is how we're going to make change, and we got to bring into the fold the next generation of police officers, or who we identify as us wanting to protect our communities and understanding that it's a bigger role than each of them.
Absolutely. And you, Scott Medlin?
Yes, it's been an honor being on the show, and to everyone out there who's not in law enforcement, by all means, if you want to know something about police, or if you're wondering about certain situations, then engage with a police officer. Who better to know than someone who has law enforcement experience or is actually on the job? And if I know coronavirus has definitely put a hindrance on this, but if your department where you live does a ride-along program, go on a ride-along, and then also there's Police Citizens Academies, stuff like that. Get involved, and that's another way to keep conversations moving forward.
Absolutely, absolutely, gentlemen.
That is
We
great.
appreciate you, like Elizabeth said earlier, for coming on and engaging this conversation with us. It's truly appreciated, truly appreciated. Thank you. You guys hang tight. We will talk to you on the other side of our closing. So we'll talk to you in a minute. All right, Elizabeth, that was a good conversation. What do you think about that
That was
one?
amazing. I'm excited. I hope that that was the beginning for some people to have the courage to start hard conversations and to build bridges. So I'm super grateful. Good job, Dale. Good job. You handled it.
Well, good job, Elizabeth. Yeah. We love doing this. We love doing this to you guys. So next time we will engage in more conversation. I hope you guys out there enjoyed this conversation as well with us, with your comments and questions. The replay on YouTube will be available for you to keep playing this to perpetuity, and we appreciate you. So thank you for joining us. My name was Dale. That's my girl Lizzie right there.
See y'all later.
We'll see y'all next time.
Normally I play the wrong way, whatever.
We'll see you next time. Black and Blue, we out.
I'm not afraid to overcome every feeling that I have. So take me in your arms.